About 10 years ago, I was flying across from Australia back home to Vancouver, I was living in at the time. And I remember seeing the curvature of the Earth, and it brought to my attention the way that astronauts feel when they go into outer space and they see the globe in its totality. And what happens is when they come back to Earth, they're no longer the same. There's a shift that happens. It's a perspective shift. And what I discovered was the challenges that we go through in our lives that led you to being in this container and receiving this guidance from me. That if I were to just give you, to help you shift two things, shift your perspective cognitively and also rewire the story in your body that you made out of that initial kind of narrative based on the woundings and the traumas that you experienced, that combination of that top-down and bottom-up approach results in a really profound sense of healing, a profound sense of relief, and it helps us navigate this mysterious journey of life that we're all on. That's very sensational. It's all about the senses, and we just don't know what to do with it. And it wasn't until I had my wake-up call, which was realizing that I was knee deep, chest deep, actually neck deep in a trauma bond that basically was all about a sexual thrill, because I had my sexual thrill coupled with shame and guilt from my upbringing growing up as a Baha'i. And because of that integration of sex is bad, you're not supposed to be, you know, save it till you're married, you know, and, you know, because of that wounding and that secrecy, my sexual kind of journey was baked in secrecy because it wasn't kind of acceptable in the open. Type in the chat if you can relate to what I'm saying here. Because of that, there's a term called coupling. What ends up happening is I then hook in sexual pleasure with thrill and secrecy. And that literally was the operating system behind my last relationship. And because of that underlying incongruency, that coupling, which was all based on sexual trauma, I had labeled it incorrectly as a sexual addiction. It led to this very toxic kind of volatile push-pull dynamic in a relationship dynamic here. Anyone here can relate to that? Type in the chat if you can relate. So basically, it all just kept escalating, depolarizing, repolarizing with the sexuality, getting away from you, you're the devil, you're the most amazing thing, I can't live without you, back and forth until it reached a epic proportion where I was gifted with a wake-up call where I became physically violent. This has never happened in any other relationship, although it had happened in almost every one of her relationships. By the way, I'm not blaming anybody here. I'm not saying it's her fault at all. Please, so spare me the emails that I usually get when I talk. My biggest challenge is in sharing this work is being accused of victim blaming. And I'm really going to be very clear that this is not about condoning anything like that. It's really about understanding. And so it's taken me quite a bit of work to really understand and unpack what went down and how did I end up there? Number one, that was my first question. How do I make sure this dynamic never happens again? As the second question, what I wanted to answer. The third question I wanted to answer was, if I can do number one and number two, can I have a secure relationship? Because I had never really experienced one before. Type in the chat if you can relate to me. Like, most of the cycle breakers in our community are like, what's a secure relationship? What does that even feel like? What is that even? What is that? I've only known this one thing, right? I've only known this one thing, right? You had no idea. Jacqueline says, I've never had a secure, no idea, right? Secure relationship sounds amazing. In theory, what the does that even feel like, right? So if you can relate to what I'm saying, I was just like, all right, so if I can do number 1 and number 2, how do I figure out if number 3 is even possible? What does a secure relationship even look like and feel like? And if I can pull that off, which I got to 1, tick, boom. Number 2, tick. Number 3, ooh, look here. I have a great secure relationship now. Boom. Number 3, tick. The problem here is, and this is where I'm getting into more of the advanced stuff, we don't cover that in today's container. That's deeper in our kind of like community container, especially in our Alchemy of Polarity mastermind, where we really go deep into this. This is the 4th question that I had to answer, which is, it's easy having great sex in a trauma bond. It's so easy having great sex in a trauma bond. Why? Because the 4 years I was with her, it was all a secret, because she also was a former exotic dancer and sex worker, high-end escort, now turned to still in sex working, but now she was kind of like the madam. She was kind of like a pimp. I couldn't bring that shit home to mom. I'm a Baha'i. I have a Baha'i family. This is like, and they're all, you know, respected community, right? And I used to be a Sunday school teacher, for Christ's sakes. Can you see the cluster I was walking into? I had no chance. I had no chance. I had 0 chance from the beginning once I really unpacked it all. And my work was to dispel the secrecy, dispel the silence, dispel the shame, and get to a place of healing. And then the last kind of thing, which is to have healthy sexual connection that's not trauma bonded, that's not associated with thrill and secrecy, because there's no thrill in a relationship where I'm married and it's no, you know, there's no guilt about having sex with my wife. So if it's not coupled with guilt and shame and secrecy, then Houston, my trauma bonded had a problem. Do you guys get what my journey's been? Anybody here can relate? Type in the chat. Let me just pause and let that land for you, right? You might be the only person to explain what I've experienced. Okay, well, I'm glad. That's why you're in the right place, because I have this much judgment towards you. I have this much kind of like, you're bad. In fact, I'm trying to promote a completely different idea, which is about healing. And that really involves bringing up the conversation level to a mature level where we can talk about these things. And also in our community containers, we talk about just as equally triggering, which is money. Oof. People will jump into bed with one another and exchange bodily fluids before they'll talk about their finances. That's the truth. So I'm all about creating a community container and offerings and programs that dispel the shame so we can actually heal. Because what I discovered, this was like a very big aha revelation, was that shame is a binding force with our trauma. Shame is like a crazy glue that binds us to trauma. Even though it's something that we avoid, something that we hate, something that we're afraid of, deep down, there's a part of us that gets off on it. There's a part of you, you kinky little minx, that gets off on the shame. And so the only way that we can heal this is to get off of our moral high ground. Of course, morality is important, but this community I'm leading I'm an imperfect soul. I'm not a guru or this is in a cult. I was just watching that cult leader video last night, you know, because people are like, is this a cult? And I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, no. Look, I'm just on the path with you. I'm just a guide. I'm not like some deity. I know that's hard for many of you to believe. I know, you know, no, I'm just kidding. I'm just on a path of healing my shit and having secure relationship and having great sexuality on the other side of a secure relationship, feeling safe in my own skin, feeling confident in who I am, and really connected with my purpose in the gifts that I want to share with the world. And I believe that you have the capacity to get there too, once you're committed to dispelling all of this conditioning that's laying within your body through no fault of your own, but you've coupled these experiences with, I'm bad, I'm unworthy, I'm not deserving. And so I gotta chase after the person, the things, the money, the fame, the validation externally, because I am completely dissociated from it, because I am so deep in the shame. Today is about getting an overview perspective, a 30,000 foot view of your life, to uncovering, for many of you for the very first time, these unconscious complexes that have been driving your entire life and you have no idea. All you're feeling is just frustration. Why is it that I feel unworthy in this relationship? Why can't I get them to commit to me? Why is it that I check out during sex? Why is it that I just, you know, I'm kind of like at this limit in my career? My friend, I realize it all has to do with one thing. It's unresolved wounding, attachment wounds. And I was committed, number one, to find out how I got there. Number two, to make sure how I don't have to repeat that pattern again. Number three, can I have a secure relationship on the other side of healing from those trauma bonds and have healthy, conscious sexuality on the other side of a trauma bond? Because I was then still realized, even though I got married, I was still hooked on the thrill, and there was a problem that arose. And so once I figured that out, and it's a work in progress, all of these are a work in progress, there's no finish line, then I thought of number four. And number four was, it is my sacred duty to pay that forward and to teach other people exactly why they're unconsciously bound to these old patterns, so that if they have the courage, because it's going to take courage to commit to the process of breaking the cycle, to break that cycle so that they can author their own lives and navigate this life, this weird, scary life existence that's, you know, when you think about it, it's a big mystery, in a way that feels empowering. In a way with agency, with sovereignty, that you have the tools to actually manifest your own destiny. That's what it all comes down to.